Vantari VR has made a name for itself by revolutionising medical training using flight simulator style tech. It's gaining recognition following a $100,000 grant from Epic Games to help it scale the platform. And to tell us more is founder Vijay Paul, who joins us here in the studio. Welcome, Vijay.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Great to have you in. Now, I reckon anyone who plays Fortnite must think you have enormous street cred right now. But tell us a little bit more about the project and the funds, how they've come about.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So, Vantari is a virtual reality technology platform that basically allows doctors and students to practice life-saving procedures in VR in a safe, scalable fashion. So really, when you think about virtual reality, you build on one of two engines, and one of them is the Unreal Engine, which is what the Epic Games and sort of the Epic organization owns. So what they've done to promote the industry is set aside $100 million that are to be ascribed to developers, both big and small, in terms of bringing their products to life using the Unreal Engine. And we've received one of those Epic Mega Grants for our project.
Wow, very exciting. Now, tell us more about the technology involved in the project and how it's actually helping train doctors. I guess the end game is to reduce mistakes, to make them more accurate.
Yeah, absolutely. So really, I mean, when we think of virtual reality, we probably think of, the movie Ready Player One or some kind of a pop culture references. But really, what it is essentially the headset that you put on, which is fully immersive, is a virtual reality technology, and it can or cannot be connected to a laptop, depending on how you set it up. And once you put it on, you're immersed in a totally new environment, which could be anything. So it could be an operating theater, could be a ward bed in a hospital, whatever setting you want in the medical setting. And within that, you can practice any procedure by interacting with the actual medical instruments in the virtual environment, and also interacting with the patient to do a certain procedure. So if you think about it like that, you can imagine that a doctor who is a novice or an expert who's kind of de-skilled a little bit can actually go into that environment and practice procedures tens of times, hundreds of times before they go on to do it on a real patient. So their baseline proficiency can be brought up to a certain level, and we can keep that consistent across the board and therefore reduce medical error.
So I suppose just the same way that we often see military technology trickle down into the general community, is this a case of what you're doing with Vantari sort of somehow feeds into a game like Infinity Blade or the gaming community more broadly as a consequence of what you're doing, which is high-tech, high-precision, and, of course, life-saving?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think you got that exactly right. So military technology trickles down to everyday life. In this case, I would say that gaming and entertainment has trickled down to enterprise applications. So a lot of companies, obviously certainly the healthcare space, but even in other training modalities like, even simple things like tradies operating crane lifts and so on, anything like that is a procedural skill or a technical specification can be trained using virtual reality technology.
So what stage are you guys at the moment? Do you have teaching hospitals using your technology already?
Absolutely. So we're across 4 tertiary hospitals in Australia. So 3 in New South Wales and 1 in Western Australia. And we have 150 clinicians using the platform now, and all the while gathering data points for their training and education, upwards of 20,000 data points. So it's actually in the hands of real clinicians being used and making an impact already. Vantari as an organisation is a team of 10. So we've kind of really expanded over the last 4 years we've been around.
Cool.
So I'm really interested in your backstory because you and your co-founder, you're both doctors.
Yeah.
What were you sitting down post-op or something and going, there's got to be a better way to do this? Or how did all of this come about? And how difficult's the build been when you think about the skill levels that you've got to put into VR to deal with sort of issues like surgery?
No, absolutely. So that's been a really interesting one. So I'd love to say that it was a eureka moment. But it's more like a slow burn for us because, Nish and I had worked in the medical industry for about 7 years prior to starting Vantari. And there were a few problems that we encountered along the way. And one was in training and education. So on occasion, sometimes you might be in the middle of the night doing a procedure on a patient with minimal or no supervision, and you wouldn't have had the breadth of expertise or experience you would have liked to have had. And this really solves that. So when we sat down to kind of deliberately look at some of the problems that we can address, because we're very big believers in tech solving problems in healthcare, we were able to actually leverage virtual reality in that way. In terms of the complexity, it is quite complex. So having clinicians lead a company, I think, is crucial to the success of something like this, because we're able to do the clinical translation. So basically take something that's a complex problem space, break it down into specifications and actual vision for how the technology might actually develop within this industry.
And what's the next phase for you guys as you roll this out? And will the Epic Games grant be enough, or will you be looking for other funding?
Sure. So we are revenue generating, and Epic Games grant is certainly not enough. We are currently raising capital as well. So we're raising a round of 2 million as a bridge round to hit some of the milestones for this year, with a view to raising a large Series A in about 18 months' time.
Before we let you go, tell us, this is medicine. You guys are medical experts. But do you see broader applications in the longer term for the business in terms of where you can take this level of VR training? We talked about it being a little bit like a flight simulator for doctors. There must be other applications.
Yeah, absolutely. It's there are a lot of applications in various industries that can actually look at a complex problem space and then break it down into elements. Now, if you look at Epic Games CEO's big vision is having something like the metaverse, which is a continuous, interconnected, synchronous simulation, so that you and I or anyone off the street could step into what's basically like Ready Player One, be able to jump into any application in any world and to be able to do anything that they want. It's sort of limitless. So if you actually extrapolate that to any industry, you would essentially be in a hospital site going through all the specialty training, or be at a construction site going through everything, electricians, plumbers, what have you. So it has broad applications across all facets of life.
All right, well, fantastic. Dr. VJ and Dr. Nish out there, I know you came along for the ride. Great to have you on the show. We wish you all the best with it. And do let us know when you've got that bridging round in place, because it'd be great to chat with you again.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Thanks. Okay.